tiny Easter egg, Donkey Kong Bananza might have just rewritten everything we knew about the Mario timeline, while adding 2 new characters out of thin air? What? Beware, there are major spoilers ahead for Donkey Kong Bananza. So yeah, New Donk City is back, baby, and like any big city, there are ads plastered everywhere, advertising businesses like Funky's Flights, Cranky's Records, and more, including ones run by Tiny and Lanky Kong? Huh, guess they're not dead after all. But one of those ads is just a little more intriguing than the rest, being this set for a Broadway-style play titled Lady and the Kong, a New Donk story. And this isn't just a fun callback to the original Donkey Kong game, where Pauline was then known as Lady. It also seems to be a direct parody of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, or perhaps even better, Disney's Lady and the Tramp. Right down to the same curvy font in both instances. But there is just one problem. The event that the play is based on hasn't actually happened yet. Because while Pauline is a teenager here, the Donkey Kong arcade game on which it's based also featured Pauline as an adult, along with Mario 2, meaning that event is still years away from happening.
Whoa, this is heavy.
And to complicate things even further, not only is this Pauline's first time meeting DK, but they're not enemies either. They're friends.
It just don't add up!
Except it might.
From a certain point of view.
And it might just fix the entire Mario and Donkey Kong timeline. Because if this billboard isn't just a throwaway Easter egg, it suggests that the events of Donkey Kong actually did happen in this universe, but decades in the past. Hell, the entire existence of New Donk City basically confirms it too, as it exists as a tribute or memorial to the original Donkey Kong incident, as seen in Super Mario Odyssey, hence the Donk name and why the streets are named after Donkey Kong characters. This is further backed up by Cranky Kong, who remember is actually the original Donkey Kong from the arcade game, just much older and crankier. In Bonanza, he directly references that same event, even mentioning a rival in overalls. But weirdly, he doesn't say that rival's name.
Say my name.
Well, maybe he doesn't say his name because his name isn't Mario anymore.
What a twist!
Let me explain. If we take another look at that New Donk City billboard, it doesn't mention any names either. Instead, it only refers to the woman's role as Lady, which is exactly how she was known in the original arcade game, as the name Pauline wasn't actually added until later with the home console ports. And Mario wasn't Mario back then either. He was simply Jumpman. So it seems Nintendo may be using those old placeholder names as a clever way to retroactively split them into legally distinct characters, separate from Pauline and Mario. Okay, well maybe not completely separate, because—
And declare we all fam. What?
Okay, stick with me here. So we already know that the original DK and this DK are related. Because remember, the original Donkey Kong is just a younger Cranky Kong, and is the grandfather to the modern Donkey Kong. But what about Pauline? Well, curiously enough, she mentions her grandmother multiple times throughout Bonanza, which at first seems kinda random. I mean, why mention her grandmother and not say her, mom? Well, that might be because her grandmother was someone really important, as in being none other than Lady herself, and therefore part of the reason for this entire city's existence. And that connection of Lady being Pauline's grandmother would then place Lady in the same generation as Cranky Kong, as in the original Donkey Kong, making both of them grandparents to the characters partnered up together now.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Now, as for Jumpman, well, if everyone else has familial ties, it stands to reason that he might be Mario's grandfather, which could be this guy from the Mario movie, who appeared to be Mario and Luigi's grandfather. They do look shockingly similar. So yeah, we might be looking at an actual Mario family tree, which is wild for a franchise that usually treats continuity like a disease. And it elegantly explains why the modern Pauline and Mario look so different to their arcade counterparts. Because they're different people. And this has some other big ramifications too. One, since Mario and Pauline likely never dated now, that might make Peach Mario's one true love. Two, if we assume that Lady and Jumpman stayed together following the events of Donkey Kong, that could mean that Mario and Pauline might actually be related. But in this scenario, barring any other big plot twists, they're almost certainly not siblings, which would mean that Jumpman and Lady would have had to have had at least 2 kids, one of whom would be one of the parents of Mario and Luigi, and the other one of the parents of Pauline, which would make the bros and Pauline cousins to each other. But that's just a theory, a GameXplain theory. And 3, it clears up why Pauline and Mario seem so unfamiliar with each other in Mario Odyssey, as they no longer have a shared history through the original Donkey Kong, so they might actually be meeting for the first time. Which might be a little odd if they are indeed family, but it's not entirely unheard of. And if we zoom out even more, this now places the Donkey Kong arcade game as the first game in the Mario timeline, predating even Yoshi's Island, assuming that's still canon. Which is almost too perfect, as it was a birthplace for both the Mario and Donkey Kong series. Which would also mean that Bonanza happened sometime after Yoshi's Island, but before almost every other Mario game, based on Pauline's younger age. But hold up, this retcon doesn't only affect the Mario games, but the Donkey Kong ones too. So where did the Donkey Kong Country games fit in? Well, they'd have to take place before Bonanza and almost every other Mario game, as not only does Bonanza reference almost every Donkey Kong Country game in the series, but Diddy and Dixie here even remind us of the time that they had to go out and rescue DK by themselves, back in Donkey Kong Country 2, which also confirms beyond a shadow of a doubt that this DK is the same DK we've been following since the Donkey Kong Country days. Now, as for how this explains the apparent massive gap between King K. Rool going missing and his entire army turning into skeletons until now,
A good question. For another time.
so yeah, Nintendo may have just quietly recontextualized the entirety of the original Donkey Kong game, while retroactively adding 2 new characters to the Mario lore. And honestly, it might actually make way more sense this way. For one, the original Donkey Kong game never really did quite fit in with the modern lore. After all, Mario and DK haven't really been true rivals outside of the arcade game and a few spin-offs, and that whole dynamic kind of felt like a relic from a different era. 2, this explains why Pauline and Jumpman look so different to their modern day appearances, because they're entirely different characters. 3, this also fixes the inconsistent aging problem that Cranky Kong introduced. After all, if he's aged this much since the original Donkey Kong game, why didn't Mario and Pauline age too? Which became a notable problem when they started appearing in games with the modern DK. Oh, and speaking of Cranky, even though he used to reference the original arcade game constantly, he never actually mentioned Mario by name in the games themselves. So making Jumpman his own character doesn't create any issues in the DKC timeline either, as long as we ignore Cranky's video game heroes. But that was always kind of breaking the fourth wall anyway. Finally, if the Donkey Kong Jr. arcade game is still canon too, then Mario no longer looks like a massive jerk, because he wasn't the one who locked up DK and tried to kill his son. Jumpman was. So this guy might be a real jerk. But, and this is a big but, for as elegant as this possible retcon may be, it's not quite perfect, as it does introduce a few problems of its own, like how Pauline directly referenced being kidnapped by an ape long ago in Super Mario Odyssey, even calling the event traumatic. At first, that one does seem hard to explain away, but don't forget that she was also kidnapped by Void Kong and that whole gang, so that line in Odyssey may actually still work. But then there's the arcade game remake Donkey Kong 94 on the Game Boy, which straight up featured a modern day Pauline and Mario. If this does end up being a retcon, we either have to treat this game and its spin-offs as non-canon or place it in an alternate timeline. And finally, if Cranky is indeed still DK's grandfather instead of dad as in the Mario movie, then the mystery of what happened to Donkey Kong Jr. still remains. Maybe he's still out there somewhere, looking for his dad. Or maybe we'll never know. But hey, the absolute least we can do is go ahead and add DK Jr. to the family tree. There you go, buddy. So look, this change to the timeline may not quite be a perfect airtight solution, but as far as retcons go, especially ones from 45 years ago, it's a pretty good one, and it might be Nintendo's best shot at finally making sense of decades worth of lore. But then again, it's entirely possible all this means absolutely nothing and will be instantly forgotten in the next game. But there you have it, so what do you guys make of this theory? But before you write your comment, make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already for tons more videos like this from us. And with that, thanks for watching. Bye everyone!